Let's talk about the retirement plan most people are following right now. Work hard for 40 years. Put money into your 401k every month. Don't touch it. Retire at 65 with enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. That's the plan. That's what your parents told you. That's what your HR department told you when you signed up for benefits. That's what every financial commercial on television has been selling you for the last 3 decades. And here's the part nobody in that conversation ever mentioned. For most people following that exact plan, the math doesn't work, not even close. My name is Colt, and I spend a lot of time pulling apart the financial advice most people accept without question. If you've ever assumed your retirement is on track without actually running the numbers, stay with me because what we're about to go through is going to change how you think about the next 20 to 30 years of your financial life. Subscribe and hit that like button if this ends up being useful to you. Let's start with the number everyone chases, $1 million. For years, the idea of retiring with $1 million has been sold as the finish line. You hit $1 million, you're set. You can retire, you can relax, the work is done. Here's what $1 million actually looks like in retirement. Financial planners use something called the 4% rule. The idea is simple. If you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings every year, your money should last roughly 30 years without running out. On $1 million, 4% is $40,000 per year. That's $3,333 per month before taxes. Now think about your actual life, your rent or mortgage, your groceries, your utilities, your car. Your health insurance, which in retirement you're paying entirely out of pocket until Medicare kicks in at 65, your medications, your travel if you actually want to enjoy retirement, any home repairs, any family expenses. $3,333 a month. Is that the retirement you've been working 40 years for? And here's where the math gets genuinely uncomfortable. That $1 million number that already produces a modest income has become nearly impossible to reach for the average person following standard advice. Let's run the actual numbers. The average American starts seriously saving for retirement around age 32. Let's be generous and say someone starts at 30. They contribute $400 a month to their 401k, which is actually above average for most people starting out. They earn a 7% average annual return, which is a reasonable long-term stock market assumption. They do this consistently without stopping for 35 years until they reach 65. That gets them to roughly $680,000. Not $1 million, not even close to $1 million, $680,000. Following the 4% rule produces $27,200 per year, $2,266 a month before taxes. And that assumes they never missed a contribution, never pulled from their retirement during a job loss, never got divorced, never had a medical emergency that drained savings, never paused contributions to pay for their kids' college. In the real world, all of those things happen, and every single one of them pushes that final number lower. But here's the part that makes this even more serious, and this is something most people never factor in at all. Inflation. A dollar today is not a dollar in 30 years. At a modest 3% annual inflation rate, the purchasing power of money cuts roughly in half every 24 years, which means that $2,266 a month you're projecting in today's dollars. By the time you actually retire in 30 years, it will feel like about $1,100 a month in today's purchasing power. That's not retirement income, that's survival income. And barely that. Now let's talk about healthcare, because this is the single largest retirement expense most people completely forget to plan for. The average retired couple will spend somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 on healthcare costs alone during retirement. That's not a typo. $300,000 on top of all your regular living expenses, and that number has been climbing every single year. If you're 35 right now, by the time you retire, that number is likely to be significantly higher. Medicare covers some of it, not all of it. There are premiums, deductibles, copays, dental, vision, and hearing, which Medicare barely touches. And long-term care, meaning nursing home or assisted living if you ever need it, which costs an average of $7,000 to $10,000 per month and is not covered by Medicare at all. Most people building their retirement projections have a healthcare budget of exactly zero because they assume Medicare handles it. It doesn't, and that gap between what people assume and what they'll actually need is where retirement plans collapse. So let's put this all together and look at what the real retirement gap actually looks like. Meet David. David is 35 years old, earns $70,000 a year, and has been contributing 6% to his 401k since he was 28. His employer matches 3%. He feels like he's doing everything right, and compared to most people, he actually is. At his current contribution rate, David will retire at 65 with approximately $720,000. Using the 4% rule, that's $28,800 a year or $2,400 a month. Social Security will add somewhere around $1,500 a month, assuming he keeps working consistently and the program remains intact at current benefit levels. That brings David to roughly $3,900 a month in retirement income. His current monthly expenses are $4,200, and that's now, before 30 years of inflation makes everything cost more. Before healthcare becomes his largest single expense, before he accounts for the fact that retirement often costs more than people expect in the early years because you finally have time to actually do things, David isn't behind. David is doing better than most people his age, and David has a retirement gap, a difference between what his plan produces and what his retirement will actually cost. This is the retirement math nobody shows you, not because it's a secret, but because nobody profits from telling you the truth about it. The financial industry makes money when you contribute. They don't make money when you realize your contribution rate isn't enough and start demanding better answers. So what do you actually do with this information? Because this video isn't meant to make you feel hopeless, it's meant to make you feel awake. And there are real moves you can make right now that change these numbers dramatically. The first move is the most powerful one, and it's also the most overlooked. Increase your contribution rate by just 2% more than you're currently contributing. Not 10% more, not a dramatic lifestyle overhaul. Just 2% on a $70,000 salary, that's about $116 a month more going into your retirement account. Over 30 years at 7% returns, that single 2% increase adds approximately $145,000 to your final retirement balance. One decision, $145,000. The second move is to stop treating your employer match as the goal and start treating it as the floor. Most people contribute exactly enough to get the full employer match and then stop. That match is free money, and you should absolutely capture all of it. But it was never designed to be your entire retirement strategy. It's the starting point, not the finish line. The third move is to open a Roth account alongside your workplace retirement plan if you aren't already. The tax advantage on a Roth is uniquely powerful for retirement specifically. You pay taxes now on the money going in. Everything it grows into over the next 30 years comes out completely tax-free. Which means in retirement, when you're living off your savings, you're not sending a chunk of every withdrawal to the government. That tax-free compounding over decades can add hundreds of thousands of dollars to your usable retirement income. The fourth move is the one that makes all the others work. Run your actual numbers. Not a rough estimate, not a vibe, actual numbers, what you have saved right now, what you're contributing monthly, what return you're realistically expecting, what age you plan to retire, what you expect to spend monthly. Factor in healthcare. Factor in inflation. Look at the real gap between where you're headed and where you need to be. Most people avoid this exercise because they're afraid of what they'll find. But here's the reality. Finding out your retirement is underfunded at 35 is a problem you can solve. Finding out at 62 is a crisis you have to survive. The standard retirement plan was designed in a different era, an era of pension funds and company loyalty and lower healthcare costs and earlier deaths, frankly. The world it was built for no longer exists, which means the plan itself needs to be rebuilt for the world you're actually living in. You don't need to panic. You don't need to make dramatic changes overnight, but you do need to stop assuming that doing what everyone else is doing is going to be enough. Because for most people following standard advice, the math at the end of 40 years tells a very different story than the one they were sold at the beginning. Run your numbers. Close the gap while you still have time. And stop letting someone else's outdated retirement math decide what your future looks like. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you actually stand, subscribe because we do this every single week. And if you know someone who's been assuming their retirement is fine without ever actually checking, send them this video. It might be the most important financial conversation they have this year.